Hello.
Hello.
How are you?
I'm very well, thank you.
That is good. Okay. So can you please introduce yourself?
Yes, I can. My name is Kris Plummer. I am the drama advisor at Ludington High School. I direct a straight play in the fall and a musical in the spring. I've been here 25 years. I'm a professional actress, a member of Screen Actors Guild. I worked in Chicago for many years as an actress. I have my Master of Fine Arts in Acting from Southern Illinois University. And I'm just happy to be here and do what I do.
Good. Okay. So when were you born?
I was born, and my birthday is coming up.
Ooh.
April 7th, 1958. 5'8". So I'll be 66 years old. I'm so excited. Got Medicare last year. Woohoo!
Okay. So where were you born?
I was born in St. Louis, Missouri, and I grew up there and lived, well, actually I lived in Florissant, which was in the news, right? Ferguson, Florissant, because of all the awfulness. Mm-hmm. But it wasn't like that when I grew up there. It was a much smaller kind of burb of St. Louis. But I lived there till I was we moved from there when I was 13, almost 14, to Kansas, to Olathe, Kansas, where I graduated from high school and where some of my family is still there. So that's my upbringing. Mm-hmm. Midwest, through and through.
So can you tell me about your family, such as your parents or your siblings, if you had any?
My mom and my dad, Joe and Hazel, they're passed. My father died too young. He died of cancer, far too young, in his late 50s. My mom lived till her mid to late 70s and was a wonderful, crazy person. My dad was very bookish and intellectual, very bright, incredibly intelligent. My mom was wild like me. And I am the middle child, which is why I'm crazy, right? Mm-hmm. So I have an older sister, Sue, and she lives here in Ludington too, and helps with the tickets out at always helps me, is very supportive. She was a teacher for years and years in the gifted program, and is a wonderful person. Then my brother, Steve, and he passed away, unfortunately, way too young of cancer. Then myself, and then my younger brother, John, who lives out in California, who I'm going to visit in a couple of weeks. I can't wait. So there are 4 of us, 2 girls, 2 boys.
Okay, so what roles did you and your siblings play as you were growing up?
What roles did we play?
Yeah, so like was one like more
well,
controlling?
we are I would say, we are the what would you call it? The perfect example of all the psychological studies of sibling order, right? Because my sister Sue, the oldest, is so incredible. She's brilliant. She's intelligent. She's a genius, number one. But she was the oldest sibling. She's always in charge, and she's always on time. She's very organized. She's very work ethic, very much so. And then my brother Steve, well, he was the wild bean. I mean, I was wild, but he was wild in a different way. He was the hippie type, real long hair, and smoking cigarettes, and he was a wild, driving fast cars. But then the irony of that is he went to work when he was 17 at this company in Kansas, and he worked his way up to top management, and he was very successful in terms of business, in terms of that. And then there was me. And I was always interested in the arts. I was always interested in theater. From the time I was tiny, I knew that's what I wanted to do. And everybody else knew that's what I wanted to do. I was the class clown. We all went to parochial school, Catholic school, except for my youngest. And so my oldest sister went all the way through high school. Then my older brother Steve, he only went through 8th grade. Then I only went through 6th grade, and then we kind of fell away from that. And then my younger brother didn't have to, but I was the one at school. The nuns said I was possessed. They told my family that. She's insane. She's possessed. So, needless to say, I was the wild thing at the Catholic school. But then I went to private school. It was fine. So then my younger brother John, in terms of his perfect youngest baby child, he's the sweetest, kindest, gentlest, bookish, very very very. He's not an extrovert. He's an introvert. He's very private person. And he's very successful in business himself, and he and his wife out in California. So in terms of those positions in the oldest, we fit that to the T. So that's how we are.
Okay. So what chores were you subject to, or your siblings were subject to?
Chores.
Yeah.
Well, this is the other irony. We can laugh about it now, right? But I was the kid that broke everything. And I always got in trouble. If anything was ever broken, Kris did it. Kris broke it, Kris. And lots of times it was me, but lots of times it wasn't me. But they blamed it on me because I broke everything. So I never got chores with breakables. But I would I had to clean up the cat boxes. We always had cats, and I had to, pick up, do the dishes, and we'd change washing dishes, drying dishes, and then my brother, what do they call that now? But he'd take the towel and he'd slap it. Ooh, I had so many marks on my legs from him doing that to me when we had to do dishes. So it was the basic chores, that kind of stuff.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Okay. Out of the two of your siblings, which sibling did you feel closest to?
Closest, my sister. Mm-hmm. Even though she's the oldest. And when we were growing up, oh my God, when we were growing up, she was, because there's like almost 10 years difference between us in terms of age. But when we were living in our small house in St. Louis, we had to share a bedroom. Well, that was like torture for her because she was a teenager and I was a hideously filthy, dirty pig child. And I was hideous and dirty and I would throw, so it was awful. When we were growing up, it was like we were oil and water. But now we're extremely close, and I see her every time. She moved here, I moved here, and then she moved here. So we're very close.
That's good. Okay, so as you growing up, did you hear about your ancestry, or where does your family come from?
That's a curious thing too, Amari, because everybody has skeletons in their closet, right? We never knew. We think we know. My mom's side of the family, we all know. My mom's side of the family, her maiden name is Humphrey, and she grew up in University City, Missouri, which is right downtown. Her father was a police officer, Grandpa Humphrey, and and so that we know my whole mom's side of the family. They're mostly Irish, British, kind of that derivation. But then when she married my father, his last name is Banholzer. And my name is hyphenated, so it's Banholzer-Plummer, which is a mouthful. But it's a very German name. And my grandmother at the time, when I was little, I don't remember her really well, her name was Charlotte. And that was my father's mother, who at least he thought who was his mother, right? Well, come to find out, so her first husband died, and she remarried Joe Banholzer, which my father's name was Joe as well. But he was not his biological father, he was his adoptive father. And that was my grandpa that I remember as much as I can, because I was very young when he died. But he wasn't biologically my father's father. We never knew. My father, on his deathbed, when he was dying, didn't know who his real mother was. Wasn't sure. He always thought he was always told it was Charlotte. There were sisters, right? Mm-hmm. There was Charlotte, Julia, and, what was the other one? Margaret? No, I can't remember her name now. My sister knows all this. I forget stuff. But anyway, but he thought it was Charlotte, my grandma. We thought it was our grandma. But then later on in life, his stepbrother would always say, "You're not. You were adopted. You're that kind of mean stuff." Mm-hmm. So he knew it wasn't Charlotte. He thought it was the other one, Margaret or whatever her name was. I can't remember now. But come to find out, it was actually, we think, from what we were able to piece together, it was actually Julia. And we think, because nobody knows, everybody's dead. Mm-hmm. We think it's because she must have gotten pregnant. And back then, and so she was she wasn't like baby or teenager. She was probably in her early 20s when this happened, but she wasn't married. So her older sibling, Charlotte, took my father in, raised him as her child, because of the stigma, right, of illegitimacy or whatever. But we still don't know. And I want to know. I mean, I'll never be able to find out my full blood heritage. I did I sent away my DNA to one of those things for my mom's. It was all maternal. So we knew we are from her side, but my father didn't. So it's a mystery. It's a skeleton in a closet.
Yeah, that's similar with my family. My grandpa was adopted, so they don't know his parents at all. And even I've taken the 23andMe,
Yeah.
and I still don't know. There's no one that.
But you know,
links
did
that
you
to
find
it.
out from yours? I mean, this obviously not knowing my father's, only knowing my mother's. I thought there was going to be a lot of, I don't know what I thought, a lot of ethnicity, just different derivations. Certainly German, even though it was adopted. We were all, my whole blood is almost all British and Irish and all Scottish, that kind of stuff, which I was really shocked about. But I'll never know because I know them. That's the other thing though too. See, in University City, where my father grew up, my mom grew up, it's very, very Jewish, extremely Jewish community. Well, my father was raised not Catholic, he was Presbyterian. My mom was raised Catholic. And so that was something you didn't do either. You didn't, mix your religions and marry some. So we think maybe Julia, had a thing with a Jewish man too. So we don't know. But anyway.
Yeah.
That's fun, kind of fun, but scary at the same time.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think that's
Yeah.
cool though.
Yeah.
Okay, so what were your favorite activities, or what type of music did you like when you were growing up?
Oh my gosh, I did love to ride my bike. I broke my arm riding my bike. I rode my bike. We lived in a neighborhood that just had just ride around the block and around the block and around. We just loved it. And then we had a creek. We'd always go to the creek and get crawdads, and I was an early smoker. I smoked. I was a smoker. I am admitting this right to you. I smoked from the time I could steal cigarettes from my mom and dad. They were smokers. And I would get cigarettes and I'd go down to the creek and smoke. So I was a heavy duty smoker until I was like 27 years old. I'm not proud of that, but it's the most wonderful thing I ever did. So we used to do that. But then my high school had a smoking area. Do you believe it? We actually had a designated area. It was outside, but we were allowed to go out and smoke. I still can't believe that. It's disgusting because to me it's the most filthy habit on the earth, and I'm so glad I don't do it anymore. But anyway, I digress. I used to love to, but I wasn't an never athletic person. I always loved theater. We would do talent shows all the time in our neighborhood. Talent show. And I would do commercials in the mirror and stuff like that. So I always did that kind of stuff. So by the time I was in school, even at my Catholic school where I went to school, by the time Vatican II happened, we had lay teachers, not just nuns and priests, but we actually had, normal everyday lay people teaching. And Mrs. Muller was my 6th grade teacher. She was very much into drama. And she did, I can't say it in the auditorium, but she did the Scottish play.
Yes.
And I played Lady Scottish play in 6th grade. It was like, and that was when I really was bitten by not just, having fun playing characters, but I had to memorize all that Shakespeare as 12-year-old. And that's sophisticated material anyway. But I loved it, and I read all of the Shakespeare then. By the time I was just into Shakespeare. So by the time I graduated from high school, I knew exactly what I wanted to do. So there was never a question. It was always I was very creative. I love the arts. I love to create and paint and draw and stuff like that too. But yeah, so there you go.
Okay.
Yeah.
So, did you ever go on vacations as a family?
This is my biggest regret. I'm not going to lie. As a child, my family did. We would always, my dad had, he was going to be a chiropractor. He went to school to be a chiropractor. But then he only practiced for a short time. That's another mystery in our family, we don't know. But then he went on to do different business things, and he was a purchasing agent for Coca-Cola. And in St. Louis. But then when we moved to Kansas, he also worked for Coke, essentially, for Coca-Cola. So we always had soda. That's why I don't like soda. We had so much soda. But my dad had a lot of friends that had, because we were lower middle class. We did not have a lot of money. But he had friends, so we would go to the Ozarks to vacation. Now back in the day, the Ozarks was really a cool place to go and see nature. I mean, it was beautiful. And we'd go and we'd stay in this cabin. I can remember looking up at the stars, and because when we lived in the suburbs, we never saw stars. And we would mostly go to the Ozarks, and that was before Hideous took over, and it's all like, Las Vegas now. But our family, my family, we never went on vacation. We never had time, we never had the money, so I regret that. And we did a few, maybe one or two very small things, but they were always related with work, Well, we'll go there because we have to. So, but yeah. But as a child, I remember, and the horses and the stars, it was great.
Yeah, that's similar to me. Like, when
You
I was
never
growing
did
up,
either?
no.
Make
We
it a
went to
point.
Mexico once, but in Florida once, but
We'll learn from that, Amari, and make it a point with your family, whatever, however, wherever you are, settle in life. Take the time to do that. I regret it. It's my biggest regret.
okay. So, what was a defining moment in your teenage years as you were growing?
Well, my youngest was when I was 12, doing the Scottish play. That was truly defining because, as I said, I realized then what theater really is and what performing arts really are, and the discipline and the knowledge base of what it means to do theater, to read the literature, to read the plays, and know they were written to be performed. So when I was 12, that was a big one. But when I was in college, and I went to several different colleges. My first college was a small, tiny liberal arts college called Baker University, right outside Lawrence, Kansas, where KU is, in Baldwin City, Kansas. And they had a wonderful theater department. I got a scholarship to go there, and it was very small. But this was good or bad or indifferent. My theater professor at the time, she took all of us, and we left, and we moved to Kansas City to start a theater company. Just abandoned, I don't know whatever happened to it, but we went and did that. And that was defining for me because I went from being a college student to being in the workforce and trying to form a theater company. I was probably only 19 or 20 at the time. And so I thought, wow, this is not, I loved it, but it was not. So I wanted to go back to school. I realized I needed my education, I needed my training. So I went back to another small private college in St. Louis where my sister lived. I lived with her, called Lindenwood Colleges, but now it's Lindenwood University. And they had a wonderful program there. And so from there I realized this is what I want to do. But I made the mistake, so don't you make it, or anybody else. This is for anybody I made the mistake after I graduated from Lindenwood and got my undergraduate degree in theater. I think I want to teach, I thought to myself. I think I want to teach. So they there at Lindenwood said, we'll give you money to stay here and continue to work, get your master's. So I thought, I'll just double major. I'll get a master's in theater and education. No. The first education course I took, I knew, oh gosh, no, this is not for me. No way could I, no. But in the interim, I auditioned for summer stock. And that is something any actor, young actor in college needs to do. There's a whole circuit of colleges that do, and small theaters that do summer stock, and they pay you to come. So I was hired to work at Southern Illinois University, where I ended up getting my master's, to play Mama Rose in Gypsy. I was like 22 years old doing Mama Rose in Gypsy, a small role in Guys and Dolls, a small role in Harvey, which was wonderful, and I can't remember the other role I played, but they offered me, we'll give you a full ride scholarship to go to get your master's here, and I thought, yeah! So I stayed there and got my master's, and that was defining because I had to decide, okay, what do you do with an MFA? It's a terminal degree, it's a professional degree, I knew I didn't want to teach undergraduate at the time. So I thought I had to make a decision. Do I want to try to find a job teaching? Because once you get your master's, you can teach on the college level, right? Or do I want to do my craft? And I was forced to make that frightening decision. And I decided to move to Chicago and just be an actor, right? So I moved with a bunch of buds. We all went there. And that was truly defining. I loved my time in Chicago. And I loved my time working as a working actor. But it was the first time I got an agent and the first time I did movies and commercials. And I also realized that was defining. That's not my medium. I mean, I made a lot of good money. I made good money doing commercials. But I am built for the stage, for theater. I'm big, I'm tall, I'm loud. And that was my medium. So that was helpful for me to know that. So I went back to teaching. I did teaching in the small universities in Dubuque, Iowa, which was a weird place. Oh, that was scary. And other places where I taught college. Before I ended up finally realizing, I think I'm going to have to get married and have kids. So then that happened. But those were seminal moments for me, finding out what I really wanted to do. And realizing the importance of that. That's important for all of y'all to know. I don't want anyone to do anything for making money. I know money is important, but you've got to find that thing that is truly your bliss, as Joseph Campbell would say, your passion, and do what makes you happy in your heart and soul. And so I've just never made a lot of money doing what I do, but I've enjoyed it. So, yeah. That's good. That's good.
Okay, so who was your husband and when did you meet?
Well, we're getting all the dirt.
Oh.
I was married before, I've been married twice. My first husband was my best friend in college. We went to Southern Illinois University together. We were both getting our masters. He was in directing. I was in acting. And his name was Kenny McCoy. And the sweetest, tiny little short round man. We were like Mutt and Jeff, right? But my best friend, truly one of my best dear friends. We went to school together in Southern Illinois. We all moved as friends to Chicago. We were roommates in Chicago. And I think something happened it was another advice, if there is any, don't marry because you feel like we're afraid, or what are you gonna do, or you're gonna be alone, and no one loves me, we were best friends. We should never have gotten married. Thank goodness we were only married 3 years. We didn't have children. And we knew, why did we do this? This was foolish. We just were best friends. It didn't work out. So after that, I was teaching in Dubuque, Iowa at the time. And then I went to, this is where I met Rick. I went to Shakespeare Festival, the Illinois Shakespeare Festival, where one of my college professors at Southern Illinois, asked me to come and be an actor in that troupe. And I was unbearably excited about doing Shakespeare in the summer and doing it I've forgotten the name of it, but when you're doing shows all over. So I did one night, I'd do this show, the next night that show, so it's in rotation. The word escapes me, but we know what I mean. So that's where I met Rick, Mr. Plummer, who I'm married to now. I played in The Rivals, which is still one of my favorite plays in the whole wide world, Mrs. Malaprop, and he was Sir Anthony. And I was Calpurnia to his Caesar. And then that summer was truly eye-opening for me, because I'm a 6-foot-tall character actor, right? I always play the comedy roles or the old people, and I'm perfectly happy in doing that. I love playing small roles. I love playing supporting roles. But this was like a trial by fire for me. I had all of the leads. I was Mrs. Malaprop, who was a major role in The Rivals. Calpurnia is one of the few women in Caesar, and Julius Caesar. I was Beatrice in Much Ado About Nothing. And then there was another play that I don't think I was in, because you couldn't do all 4. But I was like, for the first time I saw myself as a commodity, as a talent that people recognized and cast me, and I thought, wow. So that was wonderful. So that's where I met Mr. Plummer, and the rest is history.
That's really cool.
Yeah.
Okay, so after when you met Mr. Plummer, how did it go after that?
Well, okay, so he was teaching, I was teaching in Dubuque, Iowa. He was teaching in Alabama, and he'd been in Alabama for years. He went, because this is the other irony. He got his doctorate, his master's and his PhD, I think, from Southern Illinois University, where I got mine. So I knew of him just because names passed him. I didn't know who he was. I didn't care. So that we both went to the same school is another weird fluky thing, right? So he had been teaching, when he first got his PhD, he taught in many schools. He was in Arkansas teaching in different places, but he ended up in Birmingham, Alabama teaching for many years. Then he went from Birmingham to Tuscaloosa. And so it was at Tuscaloosa where he was teaching, where you don't have to be a college student to audition for summer stock or for Shakespeare festivals. You can be anybody. And so he had auditioned for that, and he also got hired to do that. So once we met each other, and it was like, oh my, I live in Dubuque, Iowa. He said, I live in Alabama. I said, well, listen, I'm not moving to Alabama. There ain't no way I'm ever going to the South. I just have no. I'm a Midwesterner. I don't like hot. I don't like heat. I didn't want to go there. So we had to make a decision. What are we going to do? I said, well, I think we should meet in the middle and go back to my hometown of St. Louis. So we did. And we worked odd jobs, doing different stuff. And then I had Elliot, Mr. Plummer, there. And so he wanted to go back into teaching, because he had been teaching forever. And I was a mom by then. I thought, no, I'm happy being a mom. I'll do part-time work. So he applied all over the place and got hired at West Shore. And then we moved here. But I can remember when we first drove here, because I was working at the Shakespeare Festival, and we drove here from Bloomington Normal, and I thought, what is this place? There's no mall. There's no people of color. Where is it? I've never lived in a smaller town in my life. But now I appreciate it on so many levels, and I think it's getting better in terms of its cultural diversity. It needs to keep going. But so that's where I've been ever since. Here I am. Yeah.
So, can you tell me about your children and name their names?
They are my reason for life. I have to admit, I am so proud. So Mr. Plummer, Mr. Elliot Plummer here is the choir director, and so incredibly proud of him. And my children all have talents that I don't possess. Now, when I was here, they all did theater, right? Mr. Plummer was in all of my productions. I made him be, and he loved it. He was good. He enjoyed it. And it was because of that and his desire to do, at the time when he went to school here, he was a really wonderful trombone player, and he went to school to be a trombone major, but found his love for vocal music and switched. But he is, to me, I'm in awe of him, not just because of his incredible talent. He is one of the kindest, dearest, gentlest people. And he loves his job. He loves teaching, and it breaks my heart when any person that truly, we need teachers so much, especially young men and men in teaching, males in teaching. But when I hate to see them disheartened by the lack of support in our country of teachers. And it's hard not to be, feel unappreciated. And so that saddens me, but he loves what he's doing, and I'm so proud of him and his children and what he's done with his family and all of his adopted babies and his bio babies. They're just everything to us. And then my daughter, oh my God. As Mr. Plummer likes to call her, little Kris. I don't think she's exactly like me, but she's very much like me. But the only difference is she thankfully excels in things that could give her a job to pay. I never had a job other than to pay my bills so I could do theater, right? She has a great job at Grand Valley, working in the counseling department right now, and she loves it. But she is a brilliant artist, and when she was and so was Mr. Plummer, because at one time when he was little, he wanted to be an art major. So did she, and she did. She went to Grand Valley, got a degree in art, and would love to utilize that in some capacity again. But she wants to go back and get her master's in something. She's not sure. But she is so creative and so wild and so crazy and so talented in so many ways. She's just fabulous. And then my youngest, Mr. Caden Plummer. He is our true throwback to another time, man. I mean, we grew up calling him the dude, and we still call him the dude. I always call him the dude. That's all they call him, dude. Because The Big Lebowski, which is a movie we all love, if you haven't seen it, you have to, is Jeff Bridges playing this hippie-type, long-haired guy that's always, dude. He's calling me the dude. And the irony of that is when Caden was young, it's like Mr. Plummer and Caden flipped their worlds. Because when Elliot was a young boy, he was kind of, he went through if you can imagine, he went through a thug stage. He wore his pants down, hard to believe. And his caps and his weird stuff, and just bizarre. And at that time, Caden, our youngest, was very meticulous. He liked to dress fancy. He liked to wear bow ties and vests, and his hair had to be coiffed. He always said he had the best hair. And now it's just the opposite. Mr. Elliot is the coiffed, perfect one, and Caden is a hippie. He is a throwback. We call him a dirt baby. He's a dirt baby. He wants to live off the grid if he could. He just doesn't. He's very simple. he wants to make a small footprint. He's a musician, and he is awfully, incredibly talented musician. Self-taught, and just brilliant. And I'm so proud of him. And then my grandbaby, his little boy Marley. Oh, I love him. I love all my grandbabies. I'm made to be a grandma. So I'm incredibly proud of my children and my grandchildren.
Mm-hmm. That's good. Okay, so as you were growing up and as you reached adulthood, like what were some challenges and how did you push through them? Yes.
What were my challenges? Well, I think being an actor, right, is a huge challenge in this world. And I never want to say to young up-and-coming people that have a passion for wanting to act, I want them to. Because my parents were so supportive of me too. They never gave me a lot of grief, but my mom would say, you need to have something you can fall back on. That's why she always said teaching, and I thought, I didn't want to teach, but they just knew that I needed to have enough money to live on, right? So going from college, which I went all the way through master's, right? So by the time I got my master's, I was 23, 24 years old. Going out into a world where I didn't know what I was going to do other than, well, you just work a day job so you can do theater at night. And I never, when I did that living in Chicago, which I loved so much, I never, ever at that point in my life, oh, someone's calling me, we're going to hang up. Whoever thought I wanted children. I didn't, and I didn't want a family. I thought, I'm a theater person, I'm an actress. I don't want to bring a child into that world, especially Chicago. I mean, but all my friends had kids, and now my good friend Winnie, who is a dancer, has her own company, a dance company in Chicago, Winifred Hahn, and they're so incredible. She has all of her babies there. She had them home, had them at birth at home. But so my biggest challenge was, how do I fit into this world that is not really geared toward supporting and uplifting creative people, certainly not financially, and finding and just knowing I have to do what makes me happy. I just have to be poor, and I always was. That was fine. So anyone who's creative adjusts to that somehow, finds that niche in the real world, and that was a challenge.
Mm-hmm.
Still is, kind of. Yeah.
Yes, very much so. Okay, so I know you like acting a lot. So can you tell me about some of your acting experiences when you were in Chicago?
Well, I was really lucky, as I said, to do, I tell this story to you guys all the time, but it was true. One of the first shows, my then husband, Ken McCoy, we were in Chicago, and we formed several companies of our own. And in Chicago, people do it all the time. Off loop, storefront theaters. We had about 3 of them. Well, the first one we did was called, I think we ended up calling it Streetlight Theater. And we did this show called Saved. I talk about it. Anybody who knows Edward Bond, Mr. Nagel, you may know him, very famous British playwright, very famous play. And it's very, very controversial. It's awful. I talk about how they stone a baby in a carriage, and we did that play. And that was a very important role for me, because it's the first time I'd ever, and I played the old mother, the matronly crazy mother, and with the British dialect, and we had a wonderful cast. It really was a good group of people. But it was one of those plays where not a lot of people are going to come and see it or enjoy it, and we certainly didn't have a lot of people. But it was, as an actor, it was really eye-opening and experiential in terms of growth as an actor, because comedy was always my thing, and I loved comedy, and I still do, and I think comedy is much harder than drama. And so it was the first time I started to sink my teeth into really heavy drama, and I enjoyed it, but it didn't give me necessarily the same. I realized how much I'm a comic actor, and I enjoy comedy. So when I was in Chicago, I did a lot of crazy roles, but it's interesting because I just watched the other night on, I don't know if it was Seth Meyers or something, but what's his name is doing Merrily We Roll Along on Broadway again. Well, nobody does that show hardly, because it's a Sondheim that's got problems. But I did it in Chicago, and I was in the chorus, and I loved doing that show. It's a really good show. And So I was able to do things that I don't think I normally would have necessarily been cast in, because I was doing our avant-garde theater that we wanted to build our own company and do crazy pieces. And then I was doing commercial stuff, you know. I did Merrily We Roll Along. I did a show before I left Chicago and I got hired to teach in Dubuque. I was doing a musical, oh gosh, what was the name of it? On Halstead, in a brand new theater that was there. And it was, oh gosh, what was the name of it now? But it was all about online dating, or finding, back in the day, matching up to people by, you know. And it was the craziest show I've ever done in my life, and it was wacky. But I did a lot of diverse things in Chicago, and I'm glad I had the opportunity. But then again, I did a lot of commercial work, a lot of industrial films that paid my bills. You know, you get those residual monies. But that was a really good experience for me to do that, to find out that wasn't my medium, but somehow I still got hired to do it. But the other thing is too, when you go to auditions for commercials and stuff, and your agent sends you on commercials, auditions, you know what you're going to read for. Like, you're going to be reading for a Frigidaire commercial, and you're playing it. So you're supposed to dress like the character, if you're a mother, or if you're a, you know, whatever. And there were a lot, not every time, but there were a lot of times you go in, you walk into the audition, and you see everybody that looks exactly the same, you know, all these people that are character actresses. And Jane Lynch, who lived in Chicago at the time, we would be up against things all the time, because she was another 6-foot-tall character actress, right? And we auditioned for a show together at a small theater called the Commons Theater in Chicago for an original play that was written. And I got her kicked. She didn't. So Jane, ha, 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 you're a movie star now. You're a big star. But anyway, that is my claim to fame. But she was neat. She went to Southern too, or she went to Michigan State or University of Illinois, one of those big ones. But yeah, so those were kind of fun things in Chicago.
That's cool. Okay. So,
great place to work.
Yeah.
I still think so.
Okay.
If you're an actor.
So, you lived in Columbia, Missouri?
I lived in Columbia, Missouri for, oh boy, and that's a great town too. Because we lived everything is intermingled. It's really wild. When I was at when I was at Clark College teaching in Dubuque, that's where I taught for 2 years. It was a Catholic, originally a Catholic all-girls school, so there was still nuns, lots of nuns, but they don't look like nuns anymore, believe me. Whew, because the theater professor there was wild, Carol Blitchen. She was hysterical. She was so very good. But she would hire people to do shows, and she had a good friend who taught in St. Louis. Come to find out, that good friend was a teacher at Stevens College, which is a very wonderful college in Columbia. Small, liberal, private college that's all girls too, but they would bring in boys to do shows. Well, I was hired there to teach part-time stuff there when I moved to Columbia. And we lived right on Stevens campus in a little tiny bungalow. But it was then Columbia is a wonderful city. I love it. And because Mizzou is there, University of Missouri, Columbia. Great school. The J School is there. It's known for its journalist school. And I loved living in Columbia because it was also right in the middle. As a child growing up, when we moved to Olathe, Kansas, we would drive back home to Florissant to see family. And Columbia was midway between Kansas and St. Louis. So it was like boom, boom, boom. So it was a town I knew and I enjoyed. I loved living in Columbia. And that's where Mr. Plummer, Elliot, grew up. That's where he wasn't born there, but that's where my daughter was born, in Columbia. And we lived there for about three years, or maybe 4 years, maybe more, before we moved here. It's a great town.
Okay. So out of all of the places that you've lived a lot of places.
I have.
But what was your favorite and why?
Oh, God, I guess it depends on the time, my age at the time, because growing up as a child, I have very fond and wonderful memories of growing up in Florissant. It was a time when kids were still kids. You went outside and you played with your friends, and you were outside more than you were inside, and you did stuff when you had clubs, and I loved growing up there. It was a wonderful, small community of people. So when I moved to Olathe, even though it seems, at the time, it seemed like a horse town. It was this, what is this podunk farm, hee-haw, you know, from St. Louis to that. And so it seemed much more rural to me. But it was still a smaller town. It was a hard adjustment for me, I have to admit. But Olathe was fun, and going to high school there, I enjoyed very much living there, going to school as a student. But I was ready to leave, you know, I was ready to go, you know. So then in Baldwin, I lived in Baldwin City, Kansas for a while going to college. That was a weird place, So when I moved back home to St. Charles is a fabulous town to live in. St. Charles, Missouri, because I went to school right there at a small private school at the time, Lindenwood, and I loved St. Charles, loved it. It's a really old, cool community. But from there, going to Carbondale, Illinois, I don't recommend it. That was my least favorite place to live. It's hot, it's icky, no. I loved going to college there, I loved doing theater there, but no. But then Chicago was, I loved Chicago. It's a huge city that never felt big to me. I was never afraid to ride the L. I was never afraid to ride the subway, take the buses. I mean, that was a wonderful time of my life, living in Chicago. Dubuque, no thank you. No thank you, Dubuque, I'm sorry. No. It was a beautiful town, right on Mississippi River, but so scary. I mean, it had an active KKK in Dubuque. And I had never lived in a town that was so, no, I don't recommend, but beautiful in culture. But then, so from there, I moved to, I met Rick and we moved back home to St. Louis, and I love St. Louis. St. Louis is a wonderful town. I underrated. Wonderful town. I love living there. But of all the places I have lived, I have to say, and it's not just to be, whoa, I love living here in Ludington. I raised my children here in Ludington, and it's not only beautiful nature, but it really is, Michigan to me is where it's at. I really believe that. I think more, and it saddens me because I think more and more people are going to find that out. We don't want you coming here. Stay away.
No.
But I really feel like it's the best place to live in the entire country. We have fresh water. We have, yes, harsh winters, but they're getting less. I don't mind that. I have to have seasons. But it doesn't have tornadoes. It doesn't have hurricanes. It doesn't have any of the horrible crap that everybody has to. This is the place to be. So I will never leave Ludington. I love it.
Yeah.
Michigan, I am a Michigander even though I'm a Missourian, you know? I'm a Michigan.
Yeah. I've lived in Michigan my whole life, and I've visited places. I don't know, I haven't been that many places, but
right. Well, I hope you do get to go to other places. But I don't know how you feel, but I know for me, the Midwest, and I know people don't consider Michigan the Midwest. It's more northern or whatever. But to me, it still is. And I think people that are born and raised in the Midwest are just hardier people. We're stronger physically, we're stronger mentally. We can deal with the harsh winters, and the change of seasons are embedded in our psyche. My brother, I still can't believe it. When he moved out to California, he has been there since he graduated from college. And his wife is a native Californian. He loves it. He would never move, and he lives in the most beautiful part of it. I mean, he lives in this town called Pleasanton, which is right on by Monterey Bay Aquarium. It is like heaven, and it gets cooler there. It's not like always sunny, but he loves it. And I go out to visit, and I'm looking forward to it. But I cannot imagine living in a place that's always the same, or essentially. How do you appreciate the sun when it happens? You know, I don't know. So. Why do you think you like Michigan so much?
I think I like that. I haven't thought about it like that, but I like that we do have seasons that change, and I don't know, I like the water a lot. I'm a very water person.
And it's different than ocean.
I can't do the ocean.
It's not the same. No. Salt water is not my thing. Oh gosh, no. And I think that's true. And I think for me, the testament to that is my sister moved here. My brother moved here, not my younger brother, my older brother. He moved here and bought a home before he passed. Everybody comes here to visit and vacation in my family. It's magical. It is, it's magical. So I'm happy I moved here. Glad I got to be here.
Yes, I'm glad I live here.
Yes.
Okay, so you said you liked Ludington.
I love it.
So I have a question on here, and it says, what is your favorite spot, and what do you like to do
In Ludington.
in Ludington?
Well, I'm gonna embarrass myself and shame myself because I can tell you this is a shame. We live right on Rath, which is just a few blocks from the lake. I can count on my hand, since I've lived here almost 25 years, more than that. I can count on my hand how many times I go down to the beach. I'm not a beach person. I'm not a sun person. And when I do go down there, it's just to look at it because it's so beautiful. And the state park, we do go to the state park. I love nature, but I'm not a camper.
Yeah.
I don't like to be dirty and wet. But I love the park. To me, we are so lucky to have that beautiful park. But I just love being able to walk just about anywhere. I love downtown Ludington. I love the library. I love sandcastles. We're so fortunate to have that too. The college to me is also a gem.
Yes.
You know, that's the other interesting thing that Mike will know. When we first moved here, I didn't go to community college, I went to big schools, but I always thought of community colleges as, community colleges. Because when I grew up in Olathe, everybody went to what they called JUCO, which was Johnson County Community College, just because they couldn't. I don't know, and that saddens me too, that I'm ashamed of feeling that way. But when we moved here, it was so interesting to me. The community, the entire county, really looked at West Shore as more of a 4-year, it was treated like it is a real college, but it wasn't looked down upon. Now that's changing a little, and I don't like seeing that.
Yeah.
I don't like seeing kids graduating saying, I'm just going to West Shore. Because we are so lucky to have that school and to get your gen eds and have great teachers that are there and a wonderful education. So the college has always been a huge place for us, being that obviously Mr. Plummer was the director out there for many, many years. So many wonderful productions, so many events. That's been another wonderful place too. So,
Yeah, I agree. Like when I came here, my idea of like a community college was like, no, nobody wants to go to a community college.
Right.
Like there's no point in that.
Exactly.
But then I came here and like I saw the college myself and I was like, whoa, like
Exactly.
where am I? And then
Right.
the fact that we get 2 years for free.
Now that in itself is the way it should be for everyone.
Yeah.
I mean,
amazing.
all colleges, not just junior colleges, in my opinion. But that and healthcare, free. But no, it's a jewel and a gem that we should not take for granted. And especially students that don't know what they want to do. They really don't know, and a lot of kids don't, and that's fine. But sometimes going to that school where you have a smaller group and it's not so huge and overwhelming, you have professors that are really invested in you, you can find out, oh hey, by taking a class, you can find out, oh, I don't want to do that. You know? Sometimes you have to know what you don't want to know what you want. So, big proponent of community colleges,
Yes.
big time,
Yes.
all over the country. Yeah.
So what are your favorite activities?
Regrets?
No, activities.
Oh,
here.
activities. Regrets. I have a few, but then again. Well, I'm a gardener, Amari. I'm a big gardener.
Yes, your garden is pretty pretty.
And not food, although I do grow food. I do have as my grandbabies say, where is the food? I have raised beds for growing vegetables, but mostly it is my solace, my time away. I get lost. I forget. I can spend the entire day from sun up to sunrise and not realize what time it is. I get lost in that. So I am, and my family is very much that. My father loved gardening. My sister is a huge gardener as well. My brother, massively. My brother out in California, oh God, he can tell you every tree and the botanical name for everything. It's a huge part of my upbringing. But that to me is, if I could do something and only that for the rest of my life, that's what I'd do. Yeah.
That's cool. Okay, so you were part of a few groups. You were involved with the Humane Society in PETA.
I still am a member of the Humane Society. And PETA, I was a big proponent of PETA when I
Yes.
was in Chicago.
Can you tell me about that and like why you
Well,
away
it all stems from the fact when I was, let's see, how old was I? I guess I was 21 years old. It was when I was going to school at Baldwin at Baker University. I decided then that I was going to be a vegetarian. I grew up not really liking meat anyway. Always been an animal lover. Animals have always been that's another thing that's a huge thing important to me is the love and support and respect of all life, but animals in particular. And so I decided, I don't want to kill things anymore. I'm going to be a vegetarian. So I turned to be a vegetarian, also because I was poor and I couldn't afford to eat anything but macaroni and cheese. I'm ovo-lacto, so I wasn't a vegan. I still am an ovo-lacto, what they call ovo-lacto vegetarian. I do dairy, I do eggs. Okay. So when I moved to Chicago, and living in a big urban area, everything is much more intensified, right? So huge proponents, animal supporters, and I became more and more active in wanting to do whatever I could to support that. And I was a poor actor, but I even went and bought because that was the other thing, and I still am a huge cosmetic companies that would do horrible things to animals. I still, thank goodness that's changing, but I made a huge investment in never purchasing anything that had animal testing. And in an urban setting, it's easier to find. So I thought, well, here I am buying these products that are recommended by PETA. What is this PETA? So I looked it up, People for the Ethical Treatment of Animals. I mean, how wonderful is that? And Greenpeace, I forgot to mention, I was a member of Greenpeace for a while too. But I joined PETA because I just wanted to support a group that supported what I did. And I just got, over the years, I couldn't afford my membership anymore, but now I still support that. But I don't like it when any group, and I don't care if it's one I support, which is PETA or Greenpeace, becomes radicalized. And they've become kind of radicalized in a way that makes people not like them as much because they do things that are really mean-spirited and I understand, I support why they're doing it, but I think you can catch more flies with honey, right, than vinegar. So I'm not a member anymore, but I support, that's why I did the Humane Society, because they need a voice, they don't have their own, so they need support. And I would love to foster animals, even though I can't because I have a dog that would kill them. But yeah, so those groups are important. Animal activism is important to me.
Okay.
So I'm a vegetarian for ethical reasons, not health reasons.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. So, you were part of the Optimism Club too.
I was an optimist for a while.
Yes, I'm not sure what that is, and can you tell me more about it?
Well, here in town, there are several philanthropic organizations. There's the Eagles, there's the Rotary, and the Optimist Club. And actually, my connection with the Optimist goes way back to when I was in junior high, because when I was in junior high, my drama teacher at the time was big into forensics and speech and debate, and I was a member of the debate team. And I loved that. But we had to do the speeches, and you had to memorize them and perform them, and you would perform them and then you'd get, awards for it. Well, I did pretty well. But so the Optimist Club in Olathe, Kansas had us come and do our speeches for them. That's the first time I ever heard what an optimist was. It's a philanthropic organization that does wonderful things in the community to support different, like the Optimist, the Rotary does a lot of things for students and kids, and the Optimists do a lot of things in the community to support youth and to support the community in general. And so it's just a group that you can join to be a member of. I'm not a joiner though. Not the kind that you have to go to meetings.
Yeah.
No, that wasn't for me. So I was just for a very short-lived time a member of that. But it's a great organization, and I highly recommend people that want to be a part of it. Like the Rotary and then the young here in town, the the group that does the fireworks that helps them. They're young. You have to be young to do that.
I think Youth Advisory Council.
No, it's a what are they called? What is it, Mike? You'll know what I mean. Yeah. Anyway. Yeah. So no, I was very short time.
Okay.
Yeah.
So what are the biggest changes you've seen in the world during your lifetime?
Amari, we have to be serious. I'm not kidding you. This is a really, we're on the precipice right now. And I mean, everybody doesn't have to talk their politics, but I wear everything on my sleeve, you know. I am, and even to you guys, I know at the high school, if I were a teacher, I couldn't be as outspoken as I am. I know that, because you don't want to bring your whatevers into the classroom. But, and I get that, and I support that. But I am a very, very, very left-wing person. I'm a very, very much a social person that believes in helping society. And I grew up in a time, my first time I was able to vote for president was in 1976. And I voted for Jimmy Carter, and I was so excited to do that. And I was able to put into action the thoughts that were important to me, the things that were important to me in terms of the parties now. They went through a change of neither one of them. They all have their problems, but now it is really cut and dry. And for you guys, I worry for your generation, and mostly I worry for my grandbabies, because I don't know what's going to happen. Right now, the change I see the most is how unbearably, painfully, violently divided we are, to the point where we can't even have a conversation. I know that I wear my liberalism on my sleeve, but it doesn't mean I don't want to talk. I truly want to have discussions with the other side to find out why they believe the way they believe. Not just in a way of, well, the Democrats are, this, and the Republicans are more money and No, because it's more than that. It's it has to do with our value system. And I hate that you guys are living in a time so divided, not just in politics, but politics very much so, but the whole god-awful gun issue. I am so fed up with guns and violence and what's happening to our young people in their schools. I grew up, I was never afraid or worried about being shot when I went to school. You shouldn't have to think about that. That should never be on the radar of a young person's lives. You go to school to learn, to have fun, to grow, and you should never be concerned with that. So the violence issue, the gun issue, the political divide and now not just politics, but I'm sorry, this next election is going to be the make or break of the United States of America. We are a democracy, and democracy is fragile. But when I went to see, and this is how theater and the world overlap. When I went to see Hamilton for the first time in my life in Chicago, honestly, I felt like I could elevate off my seat into the sky, because not only was it brilliant and magnificent, and its use of anachronistically making people of different color be our form. I honestly sat there watching that and was filled with unbearable pride for my country. I thought, this is what America is. These people created this unbelievable thing, this unbelievable experiment, and I live in a country. I'm so proud and so fortunate to live in this country, and I still feel that way. But we are really on the edge of losing that, and people don't understand that. And there are times I play the game in my head. I think, okay, we're a people anyway. Humans are a group of people that say, well, I gotta wait till something really bad happens before I fix it, right? I'm gonna wait till I, break my leg to realize, oh, I should be more careful. And that's a silly, analogy or whatever, but I don't want us to wait to find out, to have a dictator in an oligarchy, or heaven forbid, a theocracy, to find out, oh my gosh, what have we done? Because it's too late. It's too late. And it's not like the other side isn't telling us what they want to do. They're telling us exactly what they want to do. And the people that are on their side, that are loving their Social Security check every year, loving having Medicare, loving being able to have public education, all these things that are a part of a socialized country that offers those benefits are not a part of a dictatorship or an oligarchy. And I fear. So that's what I'm not going to lie and say I am not filled with dread. I have hope, but my belief in our voting population is kind of not very good right now. I'm not looking so good at them. So you guys, your young age, you have to get out there and change the world. Make sure this doesn't happen. So I don't know how you feel about that, but that's where I think the world is really, and the world, not just the United States. It's really bad here, but.
Yeah, I agree.
Yeah. Terrifying.
Okay, so this is gonna be like the last question.
We're doing good.
Yes. Okay.
We're doing good.
Are there any regrets or things you wish you had done differently?
I talked about regrets.
Regrets.
And I did mention them earlier. Not taking time to go with your family, even if it's just your partner, or if you have children, or if you go with your grandma. And taking time out of your life to go and see things and do things. Because now, as I get older, we've started to do more things, and go and see places I've never seen. But this country is vast. And I don't think you have to be, go to Europe, even though that's fabulous. And everyone should do that. But we need to see these things before they're gone. And so I regret not having done it sooner, waiting too late to do that. But in terms of regrets about the choices I've made in my life, about being a part of a creative life, I can't imagine doing anything else. I'm so happy and so proud that I've been able to do that and share it with others, because that's important too, and hopefully grow it in others. Because I know at this stage in high school, especially here in Ludington, not just Ludington, but a lot of schools, there are very strong proponents of one thing or another, and kids don't tend to explore and experiment. And when they do, I love that. So if I can have one kid that was always, all I do is play football, I don't do anything else, come and do something else, then I'm happy. So
Yes.
yeah.
I agree.
Very good.
Okay. Thank you.
It's a pleasure, Amari. I hope you get a good grade.
I probably will. This was fun. I liked it.
It was great fun.